Welcome to the Dr. Pete Goldman Show. I'm super psyched to have Dr. James Buttertime Huang with me. And there's a lot we can talk about. And welcome to the show.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. I mean, it's crazy. I was just at your headquarters like not too long ago. So I got to actually see like it in real life. And so now I'm on the other side, back in Berkeley, California, in the crazy, crazy California.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Dr. James, you are an expert on many health topics. Some are what are known as mainstream health topics like eating and exercise, and some are non-mainstream health topics. And you have quite a following, people who are interested in your ideas on various subjects. And I find that when it comes to what one might call like conspiracy theories, there's all different things. There's some so-called conspiracy theories that, turn out to be very accurate. And there are, of course, some that are inaccurate. But I think you're a very grounded person, so that when you talk about things that may not be known to the general population, you're coming at it from a very grounded and logical and open-minded viewpoint. So I think the things that you have explored and are interested in and you talk about, they come from a good, reliable area. So on that note, just getting right into it. The first thing I want to ask you about, which most people either don't know about at all, they're just unfamiliar with the concept, or even if they have heard about it, it's so unfathomable to them that they can't really explore it. But there's an idea that the weather itself is often manipulated. Now, obviously some weather is not manipulated. Sometimes it rains or it's cold or it's snowing or it's windy just because it is. Tornado. And with that said, it appears that the weather at times is actually manipulated. So if you wouldn't mind, tell me about who's manipulating it, why is it being manipulated, how is it being manipulated, and anything else you want to add on that subject.
Okay, so let's see. Well, one thing is I'm really into snowboarding. So I go snowboarding every winter, at least, I don't know, 60 days out of the year. Okay. So because of that, I'm up to date on news relating to ski resorts. So if you look up ski resorts, Denver, Colorado, there's Vail resorts, and you look up ski resorts in California, we have like North Star and Squaw Valley, Alpine. You'll find news about cloud seeding, okay? And they'll talk about how they manipulate the weather based on their forecasts of the current season. They're like, oh, we're going to have a low snow season this year. So they actually show you how much money they spend. They spend like it's like millions of dollars on a cloud seeding program, which means that they shoot lasers into the sky and then it actually manipulates the cloud formation and it makes the clouds bigger. So that's what, according to some articles. And then on top of that, they take planes that shoot, chemicals in the air. Just think of like AC, for example. It's a chemical and then it makes it cold. So they shoot these chemicals in the sky and then they laser them and then they call it cloud seeding. And it actually makes the clouds or the storms bigger. So they might get a bigger storm or make it snow more than what was originally forecasted.
So for example, like let's say like at a ski resort, maybe more snow might be beneficial. But in general, what are some of the other reasons they'd want to manipulate the weather?
Oh, well, okay. So this is you can look up articles on this, but there's a few articles about planning your perfect wedding day. Okay. So you can find an article that says that you can actually pay, I think, $10,000 and make it not rain on your wedding day. Okay. And that's the same kind of idea, weather manipulation. And so somehow somebody's out there that allows you to do that, but it's also been done in the government. They used cloud seeding for, I think, Vietnam War. The same thing. They made it rain more so that they had an advantage in terms of going in and, I don't know, fighting and making it easier for them. So there's also that as well. So you can look that up. But so it's been around. So cloud seeding is one thing that is done for weather manipulation. But outside of that, there there's I mean, people might, this is a conspiracy theory thought, would be like, okay, well, all the hurricanes that happen every year in Florida, they could also be because of weather manipulation. And um, so there are some videos that were made that would talk about different names, and it'd be like, Hurricane Charlie, and then Hurricane Dave, and Hurricane Eric, and Frank, and it's just like it just goes on these letters, and it just like seems so kind of strange. It seems like, why would they have a hurricane named? And I don't even know where they come up with these names. So and then you watch the Truman Show, and then you see them like deliberately doing it to Truman. Like, oh, we're gonna make more rain, we're gonna make more lightning. That's
Okay. Well,
yeah.
listen, that's a subject that probably could be discussed for an
Oh
hour.
yeah,
And now that we've
yeah,
discussed it, I'm sure that
yeah,
people can explore it a little bit. But I was curious about that. Another thing that you mentioned a little bit in your answer, which was another thing I wanted to ask you when you mentioned about
yeah,
like kind of you alluded a little bit to chemtrails. So for those who don't know, there's an idea.
yeah,
I'm not saying it's true or false. I don't know for sure,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there's an idea
yeah,
that when you look up in the sky and you see these white,
yeah,
lines in the sky, those are what's known as chemtrails. And the
yeah,
idea is it's not a commercial jet just
yeah,
leaving, some remnant behind it. The
yeah,
idea is that someone or some people or for
yeah,
some reason they are trying to just deliberately drop chemicals onto the earth to
yeah,
do whatever they're supposed to be doing. I mentioned this to Dr. James that I actually saw I
yeah.
saw what I call a chemtrail going straight up in the air. Now, if someone's going to argue that's a commercial jet, I think a commercial jet would probably go this way or this way, but this was going, or maybe even landing, but this was going
Yeah,
straight up. So
yeah,
anyway, that was an interesting thing to observe. So, Dr. James,
yeah,
why do what is behind chemtrails? If they're indeed true, who in
yeah.
the world is trying to poison the population?
That's a very deep subject. So there is a website called geoengineering.org. So geoengineering has become a more popular term for weather manipulation, and it's basically the solution to climate change is what we call geoengineering. And so there's actually students that go to college and they learn about geoengineering. It's like an actual major. So UC Berkeley, there was an article written about it, and so it's their approach to climate change. So, and if you look into the news even more, you find out that Bill Gates wants to block the sun. Okay. And so they use geoengineering to block the sun. So they're like, we need to block the sun because of global warming. So then they actually create these cloud formations that you'll see. And if you fly a lot, and I know you fly a lot, you'll look out the window and you're like, dude, they covered all of California in fog. It's completely covered. There's like miles and miles and miles, and then all of a sudden there's an opening where there's nothing, but you see this like abnormal cloud formation, and there's no way that those clouds just form naturally. It's like,
Why does Bill Gates, like for example, let's say Bill Gates wanted to block the sun and he was taking steps to do that, how
yeah.
would that ultimately benefit him?
Well, it makes him sound like he's trying to help the world. That's why, because they're thinking that the pollution and all of the gas cars, and everything that we do, our industry, our factories are polluting the air, causing global warming. And so if we don't stop it, then we're going to destroy our planet. So that's their theory, right? And so, and then, it just makes, I mean, I haven't watched any of his Netflix episodes, but he became like this celebrity overnight, basically by creating all these documentaries, and now everyone believes him to be like some medical expert,
Okay. Let
or
me
science expert, or weather
Yeah, yeah.
expert.
Totally.
Yeah,
Let's just talk for a moment, speaking
yeah.
of, things like chemicals in the environment. Let's just talk about tap water.
Oh yes.
So, like for example, first of all, I would think, I don't know for sure, I would think globally
Yeah.
tap water has varying degrees of cleanliness,
Oh yeah.
safety, etc. Like if you have tap water in Flint,
Yeah.
Michigan, it's probably different than having tap water in Berkeley, California, or maybe in Paris, France. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about what is in tap water. Why shouldn't it be in tap water?
Yeah.
Should people drink filtered water? Should they drink spring water? Should they drink
Yeah.
distilled water? Or
Okay.
should they just drink tap water? What's going on? What are your thoughts on tap water in general?
Okay. So, yeah, that's a great question. So, number one, we don't really know what's in our water. I mean, we can test it ourselves, I guess, take it to a lab. But in general, what we are told is that there's fluoride in our water for our own good. There's chlorine in our water for our own good, and then they filter whatever other chemicals that might be in the water. So that's what we have been told. And the funny thing is, I go onto the East Bay Mud, or I go to the municipal water district over here, and I go to their website, and it actually says their water comes from a natural spring. It's really crazy, but that's total BS. So, but I looked at it, and they have all these, like, it's a lot of propaganda on their website, but I have many patients that have worked for East Bay Mud for the water district, and they say they don't even take showers with the water. They get a filter. They filter everything, and they don't drink it for sure. So there's definitely something wrong with the water. But I would say before 2020, I felt like I could drink tap water and like not die, you know. But now I don't even trust it. Like there's something funny about the water. It smells funny. It smells like extra chlorinated. I was in Tennessee and it was like reeking of chlorine coming out of the faucet when I was brushing my teeth. So there's definitely chlorine and fluoride in our water.
Well,
And so,
on that note, let's just say people are putting fluoride and chlorine in the water. Do you think they just don't know any better, and they think that the fluoride is good for something, and the chlorine is cleaning it, or do you
yeah.
think, or do you think like chemtrails, someone's trying to poison the population?
Well, I mean, the history of fluoride was that it was like a military waste that they had, that they, I forget exactly the whole history of it, but it was a military waste that was toxic, a toxic chemical. And so they had to figure out a solution, like how can we get rid of this waste? And so they connected with dentists and they figure out this big fat, lie, I guess, and they diluted it and they just put it into our water source, which is really insane. And then some people have, they say that it messes the pineal gland and it makes us like dumber. So it's possible.
Now, let me ask you this: when it comes to people who
Yeah,
have been damaged
yeah,
by either smelling in
yeah,
chemtrail
yeah, yeah,
stuff, or
yes,
drinking water, or
yeah,
maybe taking a inoculation of some
yeah,
type, or
yeah,
several inoculations,
yes,
and they come to you.
yes,
You are a doctor, and they come
yeah,
to you, and you
yeah,
you say to them something like, "Hey, I see that there's obviously damage here from the environment of the
yeah,
chemtrails, the
yeah,
the tap water, or some inoculations they
yeah,
took."
yeah, yeah,
And they have, they're obviously in trouble. Maybe in trouble sounds a little
yeah.
dramatic, but they're obviously not healthy.
Yes.
What are the things you do with them to help them get healthy? Because ultimately,
Okay.
whether they come to you once,
Yeah.
twice, or
Yeah.
30 times,
Yeah.
the idea is for them to go from the unhealthy state to the healthy state. What are the interactions in your office,
Okay.
and what are you giving them to take and telling
Okay.
them to do, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay. That's another great question. So, um, let's see. Well, first off, I would go through their symptoms, try to figure out what symptoms do they have. Do they have congestion? Do they have headaches? That kind of thing. So, fatigue, fever. If they have extreme symptoms, then it's definitely like I need to usually detox them. There's some poison in their body. That's usually I find there's some toxin, whether it's heavy metals, pesticides, or like chlorine or fluoride, or something like
Is
that.
this
So
is this by the way tested through muscle testing and or other ways? How do you determine,
yes,
like, oh, this
yes,
person has so and so toxin, we're going to give
okay,
them this
yes,
detoxification?
yes. So I mostly do it through muscle testing, but some people come in with a hair. Like I've had patients bring in all their lab work and their heavy metal tests and all that, like they've done. and then I actually correlate it with muscle testing, and it lines right up. So, so I have mostly do it through muscle testing, and I have vials that are frequency based. So if you think about it, all water can be programmed, just like microchips are basically like um, stones that are programmed, with information. So same thing. So water can be programmed. So and there's all books about that. The Emoto book that shows like the crystals, and they say if you write certain words on the water, it comes out differently on the microscope. So
For those who don't know, by the way, I just want to
yeah,
say that Dr. James made a great point, and not everyone may be familiar with that. But I
yeah,
believe there was a Japanese scientist, and he
yeah,
looked at water under a microscope, and he would say something like, "I love you," and it would make like this beautiful shape. And then he would say
mhm,
like, "I hate you," and it would make this horrible shape,
yeah,
and things like that. So I
yes.
think that's what he's referring to.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So it's really fascinating. So over the years they've created vials that they can program with different frequencies that would represent a toxin or represent uh, a a homeopathic remedy or a vitamin. So first, I determine through that process if they have a toxin, and if they have a toxin, then it'll show up basically through muscle testing. Their body will show up weak in a sympathetic response. That means that any muscle in their body will turn off, and it will go into a global weakness. And so all I have to do is either touch the vial while I'm testing a muscle, and their arm will shut off if that's something that their body's sensitive to. So, but also, my approach is always to fix the brain first, and that's why I know that you teach zone technique, and I like zone for that. So I check the brain, make sure that there's no zones that are out of place. So that's first thing. So I make sure the brain's working, and then I go through and I test their body for different sensitivities, and if they
What
have
have you found in the last X amount of years where inoculations have been more common, whether it's
okay,
a, you know,
okay, number
what,
one,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So number one, it would be some heavy metal toxin, usually or mercury or iron. And so that's where it's unique. Iron never showed up before 2020 or 2021 or whatever, but now it shows up all the time. And so some people might say that graphene oxide is the same as iron. It's like the same, compound or molecular structure. So it's fascinating that iron showed up a lot in a lot of the folks that were inoculated. Mercury does show up too, but maybe there's the same amount of mercury and people detox mercury easily, but the iron doesn't detox so well. Maybe there's a high load of it in the system of graphene oxide. And then I also think that there could be a lot of iron or graphene in the air as well. It's just, but definitely in the inoculation. So
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Let me ask, sorry, did you want to expand on that point?
Oh yeah. So I'm just saying. So after I check them for toxins. We offer different binders, different things to detox the body. I also check them for EMF sensitivity, so they might be sensitive to electronics, so cell phone, Bluetooth. So in the same way, if I put their cell phone next to the ear like they're talking on it, I can check a muscle to see if their muscle stays functional. But if it shuts off, that means that they're sensitive to that
No,
radiation.
just pausing there for a sec. If
Yeah,
you found someone, you put their phone next to their ear, you
yeah,
tested them, you found they were sensitive to have the phone that close to
yeah,
the ear,
yeah,
would you say, okay, well, listen, we're going to now balance and or clear your body in a way that
yeah.
you can do that? Or do you just say, hey, your body doesn't like that, don't do that?
So yeah, so sometimes it depends. I do both because some patients are not I guess ready for abstinence. So I don't go over abstinence. I just say, hey, I'm going to improve your body. It's going to get stronger, and then this won't be so sensitive in your body, which would be like improving the thyroid or the heart or the brain. But but if they sound like, oh yeah, I don't need my Apple Watch, I don't need my AirPods, I'll throw them away. Then I'll be like, okay, cool. Like some people are more open to that, but you can tell when folks are not. So then when they're not, I don't. I just say I'm going to improve your body, and we're going to get you stronger.
Do you think, let me ask you this, do you think that, I mean, of course, now we'd only be hypothesizing. It's hard to
Yeah,
know this, but I'm just wondering what you think.
yeah,
Do you think that people who make like Apple and Samsung, they know when these devices are in certain proximity to people, it is not beneficial to the body.
Yeah.
And they're just like, we don't care because we're making money. Or do you think that they don't even know that they that doesn't occur to them? They're just making these devices, and it doesn't even occur to them that it would have any effect on anyone's health. They don't think about that.
um, I think if you follow mainstream news and health news, they will say that cell phones, they operate on a certain wavelength or frequency that is safe and it doesn't affect the brain. They have it under microwave radiation, and along that chart it says it's safe. So according to their science, they'll think it's safe. But if you read the manual of your iPhone, it'll say it's not safe for pregnant women, may cause cancer. All these things are in the manual. Okay, so and then historically, from what I heard, that all the technology was used in the military before it was used for civilians. And so, they have probably all these studies, just like they had studies on inoculations that, you know, that were probably not safe or effective, but they still release it. And then afterwards, after the fact, people have issues, and then they cover it up with some news article that says it's safe. And so,
Let me ask you this. When it comes to, we've been talking a lot about chemical things and
yes,
toxin things,
yeah,
physical things. Now, of course, there's also like, a metaphysical world, and there's
yeah,
emotions, how they affect the body and stuff. So
yeah,
let me ask you a question that relates to kind of an example of different ways to look at something physically. And of course, then there's the idea associated with it. And I'll be more specific.
yeah,
And you might have heard this before because I've mentioned it before. But there's a cool story where I'm not going to go through all the details, but there was a guy who was like a real seeker,
yeah,
and he was living in India.
yeah.
And in India, he was studying with a hatha yoga master who told
Mhm.
him to chew his food until it became liquid. So
Okay.
he said when you chew your food, chew it, chew it, chew it, chew it, chew it, so
Yeah,
it's just like liquid. And he said, a lot of the digestion, his teacher, his hatha yoga
yeah,
teacher said,
yeah,
a lot of the digestion even starts in the mouth with the
yeah,
saliva and stuff. Okay.
yeah,
So this guy was doing that. But then later, like I said, this guy was a real spiritual seeker. He actually was, I think it was either in Iran or Afghanistan. I don't know
yeah,
which one. But
yeah,
he started studying with a
yeah.
Sufi master who was very high level Sufi master. And he kind of got into the inner circle with the Sufi master, and they were having dinner with the Sufi master who was
Yeah.
legit with his students, who this guy became one of. And when they were all eating, he was chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing. Because remember, he had come from India where he had learned to do that. And the Sufi master said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, well, I was in India. This hatha yoga master told me to chew my food. That's why I digest it better." And the
Mhm.
Sufi master said, "That's actually exactly wrong. You're making all your stomach and all the digestive apparatus, like around your stomach, weaker because it doesn't have to work to do anything. You actually want to not chew your food so much. I mean, you have to chew it enough to swallow it."
Yeah,
And I think he even said, and once in a while, just let a little piece go down there because it keeps this apparatus really strong, like the stomach and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So whatever the guy concluded, he concluded.
yeah,
From what I understand, the Sufi master had a big effect on him, and he was like, "Okay, I'm going to start doing that." And then he, sure enough, started digesting his food well, even though he wasn't chewing it good, because he kind of accepted this idea that it
yeah,
was good for him. But before, if
yeah,
he ever didn't chew some food right, he would feel that he didn't feel good because he had this idea that he had to chew it. So this is my question to you, because you
yeah.
understand all these levels.
Yes, yes,
You have
yes,
you have this one physical advice of chewing it a lot, another physical advice of not chewing it too much.
yes.
But when he kind of believed in one, it worked well, and when he believed in the other, it worked
Uh-huh.
well. So my question is, A, which one do you like better? Do you like the hatha yoga guy or the Sufi master, just on a physical level? And B, how strong is that? How strong is the emotional component and
Yes,
the idea world that it can suit? Because let's say one of them was wrong. I don't know who's wrong,
yeah.
but apparently
Okay,
the idea supersedes everything in that example.
okay. Well, I'd say that they're both right in their own way, and then so there is not like one or the other. And then, but I lean more towards the Sufi guy a little bit, but but in general, yes, there is a part of our brain that I call it the default mode network. So it's
Default
basically
mode.
network.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the part of your brain that is a little bit deeper. It allows you to connect to higher things, and so it's also your ability to multitask and focus. So if you can't multitask or focus, which some people are like zombies, basically they can't focus. They're literally just like zombies. So um, they won't be healthy because their brain is not working. So so going back to the concept of it, so like when somebody is able to have that deeper understanding of something and that concept, they can intentionally overpower whatever the negative thing is, whether it's EMF radiation or the weather outside. But it takes a lot of energy and focus. So if their brain's not working, they can't do it. That's one. So if they, and then number two, it takes a lot of energy and focus. So sometimes it's nice to like not have to. So like say you live in a toxic, polluted area and you don't want to meditate and focus all day on fighting that toxin. So you just move to Hawaii or you move to New Zealand or whatever, and then you don't have to worry about that. And you have your energy put to other things. So I kind of look at it like that.
How
Sometimes
about
it's like,
this? Okay. On that note, you know, there's a book by the book is by Koichi Tohei, who was a
yeah,
great Ki Aikido master, and he said
yeah,
in his book, I hope I'm quoting it right, but
yeah,
let's try to examine this. He said,
yeah,
look, he said when he was fighting in World War II
yeah,
for Japan, he's Japanese, he was
yeah,
fighting in China, and he got like caught behind enemy lines, so
yeah,
like they couldn't get their food supply to them anymore.
yeah,
So they were just like they had in their backpack they had rice. That's it, rice. They had like rice in the backpack, but they didn't have any clean water to make it. Matter of fact, they were making it with water from like these very dirty like ponds or just
yeah,
terrible, terrible. But they would have starved otherwise. But but on that note, they're in this war. Their adrenaline is going. They're in like this whole different like mindset. They're trying like not to get
yeah,
killed,
yeah,
whatever, and they know they'll starve if they don't eat this rice. So
yes,
they make this disgusting rice with this terrible water that's totally diseased and
yeah, yeah,
polluted, but they're fine. They were completely fine just because of like all the
yeah,
mindset around
yeah,
it because it
yeah,
was like pure survival.
yeah,
But after 1945, when World War II ended,
yeah,
if this guy went to a nice restaurant in Tokyo and
yeah,
they served them horrible rice, he would have gotten sick. They say, "Oh, he got food poisoning from this." So,
mm,
how do you think that?
yeah,
What is going on? It's almost like an expansion of what you said about living near
yeah.
a certain like
Okay,
radiation, but you kind of have
yeah.
a good mindset. What do you think is going on in these extreme examples where you're eating something that would just make almost anyone sick, but because of the mental circumstance, they just adapted and they were just fine?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So to me, that's because of like the same as the water. The negative thoughts, negative anything negative will make you weak. So if you think, oh no, you have a fear mindset of like whatever's outside, then that's going to shut you down. But if you have a totally different aspect, you say, you know what, there's like chemtrails out there, it's great, but I'm so blessed with my family. I have amazing, I mean, I'm in California, I have amazing food and source that. I'm like, who cares about chemtrails? So like you can kind of shift your mindset so that you're more positive. So you have more gratitude. So that's why all of the positive mindsets like gratitude, having faith, hope, all the things in the rays of the dawn, but having faith, hope, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, like these are positive attributes to have. Those will keep you going, I believe, in hardship and in tough times or whatever. It's the same thing. So like
I think,
for
by the way, I just want to say that I think what you said in the last, few moments is one of the most important things that we've talked about today, and everyone can learn from that. Is
yeah,
even someone like yourself, who's a real expert on and understands like the freaking fluoride in the tap water, the chemtrails,
yeah,
the inoculations. But you're saying that this attitude of just being like grateful and
yes,
positive, it
mhm,
somehow can, I don't know if override is the word,
yeah,
but it can really have an effect that makes most, if not all of
yeah.
that stuff inoperative.
Yeah, so I'll say what it goes down to. It really goes down to your spirit, your energy, or whatever you people call it, but different things like life source. But basically, I've dealt with really unhealthy people, people who, also athletes that are like totally injured and they're still able to perform, but that's because their spirit is so strong. They have a strong will and they have a strong spirit and that keeps them through, which is the same with Kohei, like going through all the in the war, eating a bunch of crap, but their will is so strong. And you see this with a lot of mothers too. They might be a single mom with like 5 kids, but they make it through because their spirit and
How
their
does one outside of being born with a lot of, we'll use the word spirit, how does one increase their spirit and make it more powerful? So you already talked about many of the benefits. How does one just say, okay, from now on, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to have a stronger spirit?
so that is I think a pretty deep question. So that usually means that they have to have some faith, and so whether they find it in church or in some other spiritual journey, but they do have to examine themselves and examine the world. Like there has to be a little bit of, um, I guess, deeper observation of the world. They can't just be like, I'm going to make money and enjoy life, but there's like contemplation. That's why I talk a lot about pausing and reflection, like a lot of reflection, and so it would come from people who I guess would consider themselves spiritual folks. So if you hang out with other people who are spiritual, you can also figure that out. So I think the church is a great place for that, but everyone has different ideas on that.
I think
So that's
faith
where I
and
would start.
contemplation, because you kind of, if I had to summarize what you're
Yeah,
saying, is faith
yeah,
like having
yeah,
faith in something,
yes,
hopefully something legit,
yes,
and whatever that may be, and
yes,
also just contemplation. And by the way, many people don't know this, but when I think you'll like this, Dr. James, is that most people, when they talk about meditation, they think about just like closing their eyes and clearing their
yes,
mind, which of
yes,
course is fine. That's a
yes,
way to meditate, no problem. Some people say a mantra, whatever. But I believe if you look up the word meditation in a dictionary, it
yes,
actually means to contemplate. It means contemplation.
yes,
Actually, meditation means to contemplate, which is why people will say like, "Oh, I'm going to meditate on that for a few days." They really mean they're going to contemplate it.
yes,
So I think contemplating and having faith is a great combo. And by the way, you may not know this, but I'm going to tell you this, that
yes,
Dr. Fleet, who of course you're familiar with,
yes,
Dr. Fleet, and anyone who's watching this video who's not familiar with Dr. Fleet can just go to drthurmanfleet.com, drthurmanfleet.com, and
hmm,
you can learn all about him. But anyway, Dr. Fleet said the best meditation, but he meant contemplation.
yeah, yeah,
He said the best meditation that anyone can do is to contemplate every day the all powerfulness, all presence, and all knowingness of God. He said that's
yes,
the best one you can do. And he said if people just spend, X amount of time per day and they contemplate that God is all present, which is
yes,
everywhere, all powerful, which means
mhm,
nothing happens outside of God's will, and all knowing, which means God knows everything that is happening, has ever happened, or will ever happen. He
yes,
said that will actually make you evolve spiritually faster than anything else.
yes.
So I hope I'm quoting him right. I
Well,
believe I
no,
am.
that's
So
yeah,
pretty cool. Pretty cool. You said kind of very, very similar thing.
exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly. And so I think I'm trying to yeah. There's a I think it's in Galatians in the Bible, but it's the fruit of the Spirit, and these are like attributes of the Spirit: are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and self-control. I think
Sounds
that's
like the rays of dawn, laws of the soul.
yeah,
Similar.
exactly. Yeah, so it's very similar. And I think that's really what people really deep down want to be. They want to have those attributes in their kids and in themselves. So I think that's where you can examine your spirituality to see, do I have patience?
Let me
Yeah.
I know you have to go to work in
Yes.
three
Yes.
minutes, so
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
gonna
Yeah.
just summarize one thing and ask you a final question.
Yeah.
The summary is, I think it's very interesting if you
Yeah.
listen to Dr. James's points today.
Yeah.
Some of it had to do with very, physical things, chemical things, but he really came back to the spiritual things, and
Yeah.
many of the spiritual things supersede the physical things. So that was great input, great
Yeah.
advice for everybody. The final question, in the few minutes we have before you head off to work, is about diet.
Hmm.
There's people who are vegan. There are people who are vegetarian.
Yes.
There are people who only eat organic. There are people who eat some organic. There are
Yes.
people who are carnivore. There are people who do a keto diet. There are people who intermittent fast.
Yeah.
So in the last couple minutes, give us some of your expertise with all this
Yeah.
varying opinions of the so-called experts on diet. What have you determined about diet?
We'll have to say this for another episode. No, I'm just kidding. um, I I actually think because I see all of the above, and I think again it's energetic. So I test people, I muscle test them, and I kind of determine what's best. But typically, nutrient dense is usually the best for people. So high in vitamins and minerals. I have. I mean, I just went to Weston A. Price Foundation conference in Tennessee. It was amazing, and mostly they're talking about organ meats and eating, animals. So that's like the highest amount of vitamins and minerals that you'll get in a fist. So I kind of lean more towards like high fat diet. So high fat for sure. So just eat a lot of fat, avocados, olive oil, and animal meats if you eat meat. But if you don't eat meat, just eat a lot of fat. So that's kind of my simple answer for that. Hope that is
It's
what.
great. How about organic, fully, none, partially? Where are you with that?
Oh yeah. So I'm again. It's a happy animals that are organic, grass fed. So grass fed meats, and then um, same with the milk coming from grass fed cows, and then your organic vegetables, spring water, clean water from the mountains. Yeah, I think you should feel good when you eat your food, and so if you feel like crap, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Probably a good hint. All right. I know
Yeah,
you got to run. Dr.
yeah.
James, awesome interview. I really appreciate it. And I think a lot of people can learn a lot of things by considering some of the things you said. So thank you.
All right, take care, Pete.